name's Chris, and I was 49 when I first became a member of Friends First, and I was a member altogether for about 3 years, I think. My situation at that time was that I was divorced, I'd been a single parent of 2 daughters for about 2 years, and I suppose I was eager to make up for lost time, really. I had been. I'd seen quite a few different people, and I'd tried different agencies. I looked at various ways to try and help God along, I suppose, to find someone for me. But so far I hadn't been quite the right person, even though I'd met some really nice people and had a couple of people that I thought maybe this might develop, but it wasn't to be. But I still remained convinced that I would meet the right person one day. I just felt I just had to have faith and wait, and I was convinced that God had someone special for me. Having said that, by the end of my second year of membership, I was beginning to waver a little bit. I'd met a few people from Friends First, again had some really nice experiences, but I was beginning to wonder whether I was going to have to wait a lot longer perhaps. I first came across Friends First in an advertisement in the back of the church magazine, and I must have filed it away because I used to actually deliver the church magazines, and I'd seen it hidden away there. And at that time I was looking at other ways of trying to meet someone, and then it suddenly occurred to me that there it was, and maybe that might be God's way of moving me forward. So I decided to make contact with them. I felt that it seemed quite unpretentious, the approach. It wasn't making massive promises, it was just saying Friends First, which I thought was a good start. And I think compared with some of the other sites and agencies I'd come across, it seemed to be a bit more humanised, really, because I could see that there were actually people there involved in running it, and had the feel that maybe they could be involved in the sorting, and you'd have someone to chat to and say, oh, this has happened, or what do you think? Which is how it turned out, really. And the other reason I suppose I thought was I was hopeful that they might have quite a lot of contacts in my area, because originally I knew that they were based in the Midlands area, and up until that point I'd had some good friendships and met some lovely people, but I'd had to travel miles and miles and miles, and I just felt very much that it was going to be, I was going to meet someone who was going to be not very far away. So yeah, that's why I decided to give Friends First a try. How I came to meet Julia? Well, it actually came to the last month of my membership, which it was kind of 2 years, but split by a year in between. And I suppose I was thinking to myself that I hadn't really tried very hard. I'd probably not written to that many people, and I'd probably been a little bit negative, rather than really going for it. So I remember looking at that last issue and thinking, right, I'm going to look through here and see who I should contact. And it was funny, really, because I'd had this emphasis in my mind that I wasn't going to travel more than a certain distance, and I'd seen people who lived just a bit further than Julia lives, in Sheffield. But now I thought to myself, no, I'm not going to do that. That's too far. It's more than an hour's journey for me. And it turned out that Julia was nearly an hour and a half's travel away. But when I just saw her photograph, I just thought, well, I'm going to try. This seems like this might be the right person. So yeah, I dashed off an email to her, and it was just really low key, and I was encouraging her as a new member. I didn't know that that was my last month's membership, and that was her very first month's membership, so I just feel that maybe God had a hand in that. Well, how long did it take before I realised that Julia might at last be the one? Well, we had our first romantic tete-a-tete at the very salubrious Hopwood Park service station on the M42, which just happened to be an ideal spot because she was travelling down past the West Midlands to visit her daughter, and it wasn't too far out of my patch, so I was quite pleased when she actually suggested that as a rendezvous point. And I just knew straight away, as soon as I saw her waiting in the foyer, that this is a bit different. And we stayed chatting for an hour. We then agreed to meet a week or two later for a walk in Dovedale, which we both knew we loved walking and loved Derbyshire, so we met up and it was kind of halfway-ish. And we spent far too long, far longer than Friends First people always tell you to meet up for, but we had a great time. And then we had a bit of a separation because I went on holiday with my father, and she was up and away elsewhere, and a few things happened, so we couldn't actually meet up, but we were emailing a lot. And certainly by the next meeting I felt, yeah, well, I don't think they come any better than this, and I really thought, thank you God, you know, is this the one? But I don't want to be too presumptuous. And it just went on from there, really. I was really proud of myself that I managed to leave it 7 whole months before I proposed to her on a bridge over a stream in Great Langdale. And I went down on my knees, did all the usual stuff, and she dragged me up straight away and said, "Don't be silly, yes, yes, yes," which was just what I needed to hear. And then we were married 7 or 8 months after that, really. So it's probably, you know, we'd say to viewers, don't try this at home, but it was right for us, and I think we both had come to the right time in our lives. How do I feel about Julia now we've been married for 2 years? Well, I suppose it just feels everything's as it should be, really. God's in his heaven, all's right with the world. I didn't really know during the 5 years before we got married, or before I met up with Julia. In those 5 years, I thought it was going to be much quicker, but I felt it was a really good time of preparation for me, and I wouldn't have been ready, or even perhaps recognised her, or been prepared to travel that bit further than my comfort zone of an hour. I was driving, so that when I did come to meet her, I really knew she was the right one, and yeah, it felt like, yeah, previous sadnesses were suddenly wiped out. It was like the verse in the prophets about, I will repay the years the locusts have taken, really. So yeah, it felt good, and remains good, really. And we inevitably have your ups and downs, but when you meet the right person, then there's suddenly a new kind of foundation to your life. As I've said, I used 2 or 3 different agencies, websites before I joined Friends First, and in between my first and second year's membership, I think I did as well. But what struck me about them was that they just were less supportive. They were just names or profiles that you juggled around, and there was less of a sense of human involvement, as I said before. So that, yeah, I felt the Friends First approach was much better, much more human. I was able to meet Catherine, attend a few really enjoyable social events. So that made it a lot better when I finally settled down to treating it seriously. Yeah, and I felt that there wasn't the potential for damage that some of the sites I've seen could cause. And I used to see some chat rooms where really quite hurtful things were said that could have been interpreted back, linked back to the people they concerned, and I wasn't really so happy being part of that, whereas I didn't feel that was really a risk in Friends First at all. The advice I'd give to someone who's in the same position as I was only 3.5 years ago, I suppose, or a bit longer when I first joined Friends First, I'd say, well, be open, keep open, and be prepared to be disappointed and to take your time, and be prepared to be surprised, really, in all sorts of different ways. Through Friends First and my other explorations, I had a bit of a roller coaster ride before I finally met up with Julia. And I'm glad I set off, and I'm glad I didn't rush it. And I'm glad I didn't give up completely, which was a temptation at one point. So I just say it's something that you can use to help you to know yourself and to know what you're looking for, and to give God a bit of a helping hand or an avenue to find the right person for you. So yeah, I'd recommend it.